really looking forward to doing this with you, Mark. You know, you are so well admired across the entire financial crypto landscape, dude. It's just really impressive how many people ask, "Hey, get Yusko back on." Okay, we love
Oh,
Yusko,
that's
so
nice.
that's nice to hear. And happy
That
birthday!
is nice. I appreciate you sharing that. That's nice.
It is good to hear. You know, old guys, we don't get tired of being admired, do we? It's okay to say
It
nice things to old guys
it
sometimes.
is. I say it all the time. Occasionally someone will send you a nice note. Handwritten's the best, but texts are good or emails. And it's true. I said a lot of people think nice things. It's another level to write it down and send it along. I mean, and we're all guilty. I mean, I do it all the time. I think, oh, that was really nice. No, write it down, send it off, and tell people how you feel because it does. I mean, we're human.
Yeah.
It is a good thing. So
Yeah, I do really well with the carrot. Not so.
yeah,
I'm not so good with the stick.
yeah.
Like
I have noticed that. I door dangle a little bit in your spaces sometimes, and
door dangle.
one,
I never heard that term before. Door dangle.
yeah. It's that guy in the office, right? He's like hanging out your door, like checking if he wants to come in. Um, but it's two things. One, I admire the commitment, like your consistency. I mean, that just showing up. Because man, there's some people on those things. It's like, oh man. I mean, but you definitely keep it carrot. Some of these people need the stick. I hate to say it, but you definitely do keep the carrot out there. So that's good.
Yeah. Well, but I don't use much stick really. It's just, I mean, some of these rooms are now getting really big, especially on some of these topics between the purists and maybe people more like me who realize the world's probably not going to be pure Bitcoin forever and ever today. It may be one day in the 20
Okay.
years, but today it's probably not going to be. To me, it's good to have some other competitors out there doing some things,
Exactly.
noticing where the gaps are and saying, hey, we have a gap here. Let's go fill it. My belief is longer term Bitcoin will fill all these gaps.
I
Um,
think it will. I do. It's a great conversation because well, we can talk about a lot of things, but I will talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Well, I mean, I think that's a good area actually, because I was just making the comment. Um, the point I was trying to make about the spaces is that I think if we just use good Southern rules, my rule in those spaces is pretend like my 90-year-old Sicilian mother's in the room with us,
Yeah.
and it's her kitchen. And if you start getting ridiculous, she's gonna come over there and slap you, man. I mean, slap you
I
hard. Okay.
I think that is exactly. I think that's exactly it.
And the rooms,
Nana's in the ring.
the
Nana's in the ring.
rooms run perfectly fine. Nobody gets jacked. It's like, come on, man. My mom's here, okay?
Yep.
So you don't have to get all angry at everybody. But listen, on
You
that point,
don't. In fact, to that point, I went to Nate Bargatze. Do you know him, the comedian? So it's this comedian, and I went to his show. My wife bought tickets for my birthday, and not one swear word. An entire 2 hour comedy show, four different comedians, not a single swear word. I'm like,
wow.
it can be done. It can be done. And it was funny. I mean, there was a lot of funny stuff, but it's not that I'm against all swearing. I use an F bomb every now and then, but it's gotten to the point where people use so many. It's like, stop. It's just not interesting. So it was just refreshing to hear somebody do real comedy based on intellect as opposed to shock.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think you helped me. Like you picked a good place to start this. I talked about Bitcoin one day, maybe, having gaps today, and
Yep.
that other people are building things. There's competition. I had a discussion. I love your input on this. Had a discussion with a gentleman the other day about peer to peer, and he was like, "Hey, look, this is a peer to peer thing. Look, Satoshi peer to peer." I'm like, "Hey, what if while Satoshi was writing this, love your viewpoint on this. What if, like most technologists, brilliant, have a beautiful vision, they then write a white paper and they give you the end result vision. Technologists go, I'm solving a problem. And they go, hey, we're going to end up peer to peer. We're going to peer to peer. But the reader doesn't understand, hey, that was his long term vision. Does not mean that happens tomorrow morning.
Correct.
And most technologists do not understand how large organisms incorporate something new.
Yeah.
And there is always a stage of assimilation into a very complex organism that doesn't start with retail. I'm sorry, it just does not start with Joe Consumer and potato chips.
Yep. No, one, it's a great perspective. It does take time, right? To change and to evolve. I mean, evolution definitionally takes time. But there's a second point that I keep coming back to, which is semantics are a funny thing. And language is a funny thing. And we're talking about English peer-to-peer. There's a translation into Chinese or Japanese or other languages where does it translate perfectly? But my other thing is people interpret even the words differently.
Correct.
Like if I say there, what am I talking about? Am I talking about there, physically there? Am I talking about they are? Am I talking about their collective? So same thing here, peer to peer. Oh, that means if you don't buy your coffee with it, it's failed.
Yeah.
No. There's another definition of peer-to-peer, which is that you and I can exchange something without need of a third party. Peer-to-peer.
Right.
It doesn't have to be buying coffee. I can literally just send you something.
Correct.
I could send you an envelope with a stamp and a letter. That's a peer-to-peer transaction, but it's not actually because we had to go through the post office.
Right.
Okay. Well, what about email? Well, I had to go through an email service.
Had to go through the CIA.
What we know is that Gmail and probably Yahoo too, it's reading all the emails. So that's not really peer-to-peer. So what we need is a way for a cryptographically secure, communication to go from me to you so that no one else can read it, no one else can see it. And this is just a form of that. And now it's better because with the advent of triple entry accounting, we can exchange value, not just information, not just voice or, words on a page. But that's so, yeah. Is everybody going to use it for coffee someday? Probably not on L0 or L1, whatever you want to call Bitcoin, but L2, L3. Yeah. I mean, I used a simple example of what I believe is money. I mean, currency. I don't actually carry paper or coins. I use a little plastic card and it batches my transactions for 30 days in a database on a mainframe that MasterCard runs. And then once a month, I settle from the L3 down to the L4 down to the L3 through ACH to the L2 of FedWire. I never touch the L1. I never touch the gold, the real money in the system, but I don't have to. And I don't really care if the Fed and Bank of America are in perfect agreement. That's not my concern. So anyway.
Yeah, no, listen, I think we're comparing apples and oranges. The semantics point was very, very well said. Bitcoin is a settlement solution, dude. It's like, I don't get the potato chips. I just don't get it. Maybe in 100 years, maybe in my view is Satoshis have to be worth a penny for that to even be considered to be worth, or half a penny. Like you have to get to valuation, huh? Right? Do you agree that?
No, exactly. but it's not even the value of it, Gary. It's the size of it. Right?
Correct.
We know there are 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis.
Right.
That's plenty, right? That's plenty for everybody. And there's no question in my mind, right, that everyone from, I use the example of my granddaughter, right? My granddaughter's 1, and she's a Gen A Zoomer, right? So she'll never have a leather wallet.
Never. She'll never have a
Not ever,
credit card,
right?
man.
She
She'll
will
never.
never touch paper money.
Never.
Because by the time she's able to open up a bank account, which used to be a rite of passage as a teenager, she won't do that. She'll just have a wallet, a digital wallet with digital money. And is it possible that every microtransaction she does for the rest of her life will be in Bitcoin? Sure. But it's a small amount of the total number of Satoshis that'll just constantly swirl. The rest will be what it is, the perfect savings technology. So I have my savings bucket of Bitcoin, but I could have a small amount. Today it's fiat, but it's not even fiat. Today it's entries in a database at Visa or MasterCard. I use MasterCard. So that idea that someday everything, all currency will be Bitcoin, sure, it's possible. Holy moly, it'll take a long time for that to happen. And could there be other things that are better, faster, cheaper? Like, are stable coins better for that purpose? Kinda, yeah. I mean, but there is a point also where Bitcoin could be so mature that the price doesn't move.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? Now, all the people who are buying it to get rich would say, no, price has number go up. I need number go up. No, what you need is value of the network to rise and your ownership stake increases in value.
Well, that's what, see, we're back to semantics because that's really what people mean when hey, number go up. I mean, I have been criticized so many times. They're like, dude, you're just here for the money. I'm like, everybody's here for the fucking money, dude. If this was a $12 product, okay, no one would be talking about it. And the price is representative of adoption. Okay, like we're not losing coins at $67,000 because we respect this asset class now. You did not respect it at 300, otherwise you wouldn't have lost it. Hey, Roger Ver, you didn't even understand what you were doing, dude. If you would have understood this opportunity was this big, you would not be in jail right now. You would have done something very different. And I am really convinced. Sorry to get so excited about it, but one, I don't need potato chips to be used by Bitcoin. It has nothing to do with my thesis on Bitcoin.
Right.
Like you would not look at this. You invest money for a living. You would not invest in this as a private equity play going, I need the domestic market to work. No, you would be like, dude, I just need 1 or 2 of these pieces to work and I'm Goldfinger. Yeah. Right? The rest of that is like, that's 20 years in the future. Maybe we get.
There's so many. Again, it's back to semantics. What is money? And we can talk about it, right? Okay. Gold is money. Money is an asset that exists in the absence of a liability. Yep. That's gold. Okay. That's not debt. That's not currency. Now, we talk about currency, dollars, yen, euros, as money. They're really not. They're currencies. And that doesn't make them bad, less good or worse. It's just they're different. Currencies are the things that we use as medium of exchange, not as a store of value. Money has been a store of value, true money, great gold for 5,000 years. And that's easy to prove. It's one of my favorite things about gold, right? Is a single ounce. If you have a 1 ounce coin in your possession at any point in the last 5,000 years, you could exchange it for the equivalent of a fine person's suit. Wait, oh, hold on a second. You mean 5,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago? Today, you get the same thing for that 1 ounce? That's kind of freaky if you think about it. I mean, it's amazing. And yet, all over that period, money, I mean, currencies have come and gone, right? I mean, there was a time, people forget, there was a time when the, what the hell was the name of it? The Italian, is it the ducat or something like that?
The Medici group?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it started with the Venetian group, and then Florence and the Medicis kind of took over. But there was I should remember what this is, but for about 300 years, this Italian currency was the world reserve currency.
Oh, it started with an F, right? FL.
Yeah, Florent, maybe Florent.
Yeah, something like that. I remember what you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. And basically, you could take it anywhere in the world and people would accept it. And that was the first time that had ever happened. And then the Portuguese, this is the part that and Portugal's not big, right? It's like New Jersey, okay? Portugal then had a currency, which was the world reserve currency for a period of time until the Spanish took them over. And then the Dutch.
I didn't realize the Portuguese. I did not realize that.
Oh yeah, from 1492 till like 1530 or 1560, something like that. The Portuguese ruled the world. I mean, they literally ruled the world. And then the Spanish Armada conquered them. And the interesting reason, people hate when I tell the story, but I like it. The reason the Portuguese were in charge, one, the Knights Templar were really badasses, but more importantly, they had the tallest trees. Therefore, their ships were the fastest.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Navy was the best. And so they had naval superiority. So when Spain conquered them, they had the fastest ships. And then the Dutch, because they invented central banks, printed money, created a mercenary force. And again, Netherlands is about the size of Ohio. They took over the Spanish Armada, which was, I mean, we're talking the badasses of all badasses. And they were in charge. Well, then they had the fast ships. Well, then the British, with their central bank, bought steamships. And once you had steamships, you had naval superiority. So then they took over. Well, then we got nuclear power, and now we are in charge. And now the next gen, 2 schools of thought. One is, well, China figured out that the next war isn't kinetic ground war, it's ships, not ships. So they don't need aircraft carriers. They need cyber superiority, which they probably have. And TikTok's a great example, right? And so they could be the next reserve currency, or we could flip to the next gen, which is Bitcoin. So the tech kind of truncates this, nation state being in charge. And to me, it's a coin flip as to which one. I don't really care, because I'd be perfectly happy if the renminbi had a stint. But ultimately, I do think that Murray Stahl was right. You should get Murray on sometime and interview him. He's amazing, from Horizon Kinetics. And it's funny that we just released in the 13Fs that he has. So he runs this firm, Horizon Kinetics, and they have 14% of client assets in the Bitcoin ETFs. And he's been in Bitcoin for a decade. He was super early. He's one of the biggest miners in the country. I mean, I would say he's the only person I know who makes me sound bearish about Bitcoin. Like, I mean, he just thinks it literally is going to be the only currency in the world, and that reverse Gresham's law will happen. And normally Gresham's law says bad money crowds out good. And that's why monies disappear, right? 775 paper currencies in the history of the world, 3/4 of them disappeared because Gresham's law says the bad money crowds out the good and then disappears, goes to zero. He says, no, this is going to be reverse Gresham's law, that the good money will eventually crowd out all the bad money. And then you can go down the path of, well, then what about nation states? And this is, Balaji's whole thing about, well, maybe we go to a stateless world, right? Maybe the metaverse is more real than we think. And then when you just pull that thread, it's like, why do nation states exist anyway?
Right.
Because a bunch of guys in a room drew lines on maps.
That's right.
I mean, that's really what happened.
That is the only thing that happened. We drew some lines on maps and we said, hey, this is the Monopoly game that we're going to be playing for the next couple of centuries until someone changes it. And it is literally no different than that, right? Hey, you brought up the 13 Fs. And I've been doing this 4 years. You've been doing this 8 to 10, so you're so far ahead of me. But in the last 10 days, we've got 900 a report now. We got the ETF. We had a bunch of bad guys thrown in jail. We get the ETF approval. Market moves from 30 to 60,000.
Yep.
I think some of that was some hedge funds probably front running the whole ETF game. Then we had, I would do it, dude. I don't know why everybody thinks this is unusual. Like if I was in the neighborhood,
it's just, it's not unusual, and it's even more sinister than that, Gary. It's the tools that are being used are very advanced, but they're very old in the sense that futures in commodity markets have been used against the average investor for decades. Well, what do I mean by that? Spoofing, right? Which is selling futures to depress the price so you can go buy something and then sell it to people later for a profit, and arbitraging, basically risk-free, a bunch of money, has been going on in every market in the history of mankind since the advent of futures contracts. Well, why? Well, in the olden days, right, wildcatting oil days, if I wanted to sell you a barrel of oil, I actually had to have a physical barrel of oil. Because if we got to the settlement date and I didn't deliver you a barrel of oil, there was a penalty. Well, these financial engineers came along and said, well, you know what? Maybe Mark and Gary don't really want to transact oil. They just want to speculate on the change in price. So Mark can write a contract that promises that he'll go get a barrel of oil. And if they don't settle up the contract before the delivery date, then he has to actually go get the oil and deliver it. Well, that's all well and good, but what does that allow someone to do? That allows someone to then, out of thin air, create a contract, a paper barrel of oil, and they can sell it. How do you sell something that doesn't exist? It's interesting. Only if somebody will buy it. So basically you have this, creation of non-physical commodities. And when you get an imbalance between the physical commodities and the paper commodities, bad things happen. Think about 2016 when the price of oil, right, went down from 100 and something down to, I think, got to $26 before China came in and saved the world by buying futures like they were going out of style. And how'd they do that? They literally printed $4 trillion. Like Ben Bernanke, Ben saved the world. Oh, China saved the world. They printed all the money. I'm sorry, no, it's 4 trillion in 2009. It was only 1 trillion with a T in 2016. But, I remember the date, February 10th.
But Mark, I got to tell you, okay, I actually think they were really smart. When crude oil is $28 and they're a net importer of all the energy, they don't really care what the price of their crude oil, they don't have any. They'll take the index. For them to print money, this is exactly what this idiot in office right now should be doing. Printing money and generating freaking Bitcoin like you read about and not telling anyone.
Oh, no. So, okay.
And that's
Yeah.
exactly what China did. And it was smart for them to
Of
do.
course, it's what China did. And it's what China, look, I say it all the time, China's playing Go, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Set us up the checkerboard, and they're playing a different game. And the difference between Go and chess or checkers is chess and checkers are direct confrontational games, right? It's head to head, middle of the board, okay, mano a mano. Go in like that. Go is about regional and spatial advantage in multiple places on the board at the same time. And so it requires much higher skills, much higher
Yeah.
math. It's why it took so much longer for a computer to beat a Go master versus a chess master. It was like 35, 40 years difference. So Go is really a big deal. And the thing about Go is you can pretend like you're losing. Like you can intentionally give someone the advantage at a certain part of the board and then quietly take over and win the game. China does that like no one I've ever seen. And again, TikTok's a great example, right? Look at TikTok in China, educational videos, maximum time limit for kids, propaganda that's positive about China, and massive data collection to help with their surveillance technology. Then they export it to the US. And what do? Unlimited.
Yeah.
Forget educational stuff. It's all about the nonsense and worse, propaganda. Like I'm not a big TikToker, but if you watch some of this stuff, Marxism's not that bad. Communism really isn't that bad. Why do you think Hitler's so bad? I mean, the stuff that they put out there, pure propaganda, meant to foment divisiveness and all the while gathering data, okay? And changing the tone of debate, right? It's like the small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, and big minds talk about ideas. So here we are talking about people and maybe events, and China's talking about ideas. It boggles the mind.
Yeah. So look, you were talking about Murray, Stahl, and Horizon, and 14% of their allocation to their investors is made to Bitcoin. You've got what we have 994, probably 1,000 companies in the last 90 days have put $100 million or more each, some 1.9 billion into Bitcoin. We are now well beyond a ETF launch. We are now receiving validation from some of the most sophisticated investors on the planet that they've gone well beyond thinking about it. They have deployed large sums of capital. Would you ever have expected, if I would have told you even 6 months to a year ago, 1,000 major firms were going to do 100 million or more in the first quarter of the ETF launch? Would you have told me I was completely out of my mind?
No, I would have said you were conservative, and I don't mean that. No, I would have said you were conservative, right? I've actually been a little disappointed that it didn't go faster. I thought it would go faster.
Really?
Oh yeah, because the game theory is so stacked against you.
Well, then it's getting ready to go faster.
No, it is going faster. I mean, it's definitely going faster. But no, I'm saying a little bit tongue in cheek. I mean, you made a provocative question. I made a provocative answer intentionally because I absolutely believe, like without a doubt, which, my wife, I always joke that my wife's only seen me talk once. She came to Vegas once for a conference. And at the end of the talk, she says, Mark, you can't say things like that. I'm like, whoa, what I say? She says, no, not what you said, how you say them.
Right.
Like, what do you mean? She says, well, you say things so forcefully. So, well, what's wrong with that? She says, well, people will believe you.
That's what she liked about you when she met you.
Yeah, exactly. But I said, that's the whole idea. She says, what if you're wrong? I said, I'm wrong all the time. I just changed my mind.
Right.
So, and the key is that when BlackRock submitted their application June 15th, last year. I was like, okay, it's over. It's happening. There will be an approval. I even gave a date, right? I said it was going to be, January 8th, and I was off by 2 days. So sue me. But I said, this is going to happen. And why was I so sure? Well, once BlackRock said, yep, we're in, and they and others who really don't want this to happen, meaning what's this? This meaning the creation of a new financial system based on blockchain. They don't really want that because they like the rent taking that they have. But bottom line, once they said we're in. Now, why did that matter? Because once January rolled around, there's 30 trillion-ish, call it for a round number, 30 trillion of boomer assets, mostly boomer assets, controlled by financial advisors. Okay. When those financial advisors got the memo that they had to get off zero, right? They had to get off zero, 10 basis points. That's 30 billion bucks. Okay. 30 billion bucks would have an impact on the price of Bitcoin. But 1%, which is not even a crazy number, 1% is 300 billion. 300 billion is more money than has ever been, more currency, more fiat than has ever been converted into Bitcoin in the first 15 years of its life. People say, no, it's $1 trillion asset. I said, yeah, but $1 trillion has not gone in.
Right.
Only a couple hundred billion have actually converted into Bitcoin. Okay. The rest is bid-ask spread and appreciation and network increase, Metcalfe's law increase. So if you add 300 billion to an asset that hasn't had 300 billion go in, big moves were going to happen. And so, but your point about, well, which institutions were also going to come in, look, my whole life was about institutional investing. I worked for two big allocators. I was paid to give money to these firms. I mean, all the people that everybody talks about now, Druckenmiller. I had money with Stan Druckenmiller when he was at Soros, when he left Soros, when he ran Duquesne, and Howard Marks. In the news, I was one of the I and we were one of the first investors with Howard when he spun out of Trust Company of the West. So I'm just old. I've been around a long time, and I've allocated these people, so I know, one, how much capital they have, two, how forward-looking they are, and three, the type of liquidity they need in order to put their capital to work, because we're talking billions, not thousands or millions. And so once there was this platform, BlackRock et al., because once they approved all of them, now we're talking real money is going to come in, and Coinbase gets adopted and is very stable. And so all of these things start to happen. And then the one that no one's even talking about is they put a little rule in at the very end where you had to have, what they call it, an authorized participant, an AP. I can't remember what AP stands for, but it's basically you have to have somebody legitimate stand behind you if you want to be an issuer. And JP Morgan said, yeah, we'll do it. Like, didn't your CEO say this was like a Ponzi scheme? So why are you willing to help with custody and transactions? And so once all of that happened, it was absolutely positively going to be fund after fund after fund. Now, the one little wrinkle, like everyone's like Millennium, they own 1.9 billion. Nah, kinda. I mean, on the day of the filing, they had long 1.9 billion. But the way Millennium works, most of their assets are long and short. So they're short something else. In many cases, they're probably long IBIT, short MSTR, because MSTR is selling at 1.7 times the underlying value of the Bitcoin. That's probably too high a premium. the leverage gives you some premium, but 1.7 is probably too high. So they're long that. They're probably, some of them are probably long IBIT and actually short Bitcoin. They actually might have a Coinbase account somewhere where they're short. Some of the underlying portfolio managers inside the Millennium umbrella. So it's not quite as unidirectional as saying, oh, yep, they own 1.9 billion long, because there's a whole bunch of shorts on the same thing with jump trading or Susquehanna. What you see on any one day doesn't mean that much. Or God rest his soul, Jim Simon's one of the greatest investors in the history of mankind. I mean, definitely. I mean, that's not hyperbole. It's true. He's in the top 5 probably of all investors. But what showed up in his 13Fs is not really useful. One, by the time you get it, 45 days later, he's had 3 or 4 dozen terms the capital. He doesn't own any of that stuff anymore. So there are different people, like when Howard Marks shows up in his 13F, he's long.
So Mark, let's make sure the audience, let's make sure the audience understands what we're talking about, because we're really talking about the difference between a long-term kind of, it dawned on me yesterday. I made a comment to someone, do 2 things. I want to talk a little bit about hedge funds and futures.
Yep.
And who's actually bought into this ETF. Just going to go through a report here, right? So Millennium's the largest investor on the 13F, 1.9 billion. You'll know some of these people quite well, I'm sure. You've got 844 million went into BlackRock, 800 went into Fidelity, 200 went into Grayscale. I would love to talk about that. Grayscale, the GBTC trust seems to be getting some inflows from some of this. I find that interesting. We won't get stuck.
Arbitrage. That's just arbitrage.
Okay,
right?
Got it.
They're buying it because the premium or discount between the different market makers
makes total sense. Okay,
yeah.
So they're going in there because it's a cheaper price than them adding another $40 million to XYZ ETF.
See what happens, and it doesn't happen at as big a scale as it used to, but markets are made by market makers, right? Hence the name, right? And in the old days, there were lots of market makers, like physical human beings. And, I would come to you at your post at the New York Stock Exchange, and I would say, hey, Gary, how's the market for, IBIT or GB? How's the market for GBTC? And you'd say 1/2 to 3/4, meaning, whatever the price, 46.5 to 3/4. There's a bid-ask spread. How much do you want? And if I wanted a really big amount, you might say, oh, it's 1/2 to a point. The spread might get wider, because you don't have as much inventory. So you got to go find that inventory. Well, there are traders out there. They're not buying to buy. They're buying to scalp that difference. And in a perfect world, they would like to overhear me ask the question, Gary, how's GBTC? And when you say 1/2 to 3/4, they would try to execute ahead of us trading someplace else and skim off that 1/4 point bid-ask spread to, tighten the spread, widen the spread, whatever they were trying to do. And so with the advent of electronic trading, those spreads got narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower. And now what happens is the high frequency traders are trading just all the time. And the really creepy part is, like, I'll put my entry into an order entry system and I'll say, okay, I'm willing to buy at 46.25. Literally, Ken Griffin's machines go ahead of me and come out ahead of me in the milliseconds, and I'm not exaggerating, like milliseconds. They're just doing that over and over and over, front running that transaction. And so there's all of this stuff going on. And so, you say, well, why would anyone buy GBTC when their fees are so high? They're not holding it for long enough that the fees matter.
Yeah.
In many cases, they're not even paying any fee because they're in and out within intraday.
Right. Yeah. So I think where I was headed though, didn't want to get so stuck on grayscale, but the hedge fund community, the way I think of the hedge fund is the guy really trading a bunch of alpha, right? He's going to use futures contracts. He's not going to use the ETFs, is he?
He might, right?
Where,
Okay, I'll give you again. I'll give you a great example.
okay, but where I'm headed though is I think the money that's coming into this $994 million wedges, I think this is RIAs. I mean, I just saw a report, 400 of them were RIAs, and the rest of them were roughly hedge funds. And then someone made a comment to me, hey, just because he's labeled as a hedge fund, it could be a family office hedge fund.
100%.
Investing long term, dude. These are 4 years to 8 year investors. That's where I'm trying to get to on this ETF. This is the most solid money Bitcoin has ever seen in its entire history.
For sure, in terms of actual amounts of money being converted into Bitcoin, because the hodlers, right? There's been a lot of videos going around, the guy sitting at his desk in 2011, he's mining 25 Bitcoin a day. Just let that sink in for a second. So he was, with one little laptop, he was mining 25 Bitcoin a day. That's worth a lot, right? But he didn't put in the equivalent of, I should be able to do the math in my head, but 25.
It's 180 grand a day, man.
Yeah. So, I mean,
No,
he's not
it's 1.8 million a day.
1.8 million. Yeah, it's 1.8 million. He didn't put in 1.8 million of fiat.
That's right.
He put in.
He probably didn't even pay for the electricity.
Yeah.
Truth be told.
Exactly. It's by stealing. Yeah, exactly. Stealing electricity. So that wasn't a conversion of fiat. What's happening now is people are converting fiat into Bitcoin with the expectation, to your point, that it's going to be worth significantly more later. And that is a massive change. It's a massive change. And we've been talking about it for a long time. I mean, you and I have been talking about it, and other people have been talking about it, that getting off zero, like having more than zero, was inevitable, right? There was just no way everyone wasn't going to have some exposure. Now, it doesn't have to be 80, 90, 100%, like some, degen or some early investor that got, I shouldn't even say investor, someone who was lucky, right? Running drugs on Silk Road, got a bunch of Bitcoin, never sold it. That's worth a lot. Although I saw a great video yesterday. This is funny. So, was a video of a kid who clearly was doing that, buying something on Silk Road. And he ended up with 55,000 Bitcoin in his wallet that he found, right? And he's like making, they did the math for it. It was $320 million. And so then he's making all these arrangements, what's the most expensive party, biggest yacht, all this stuff. And then he says, well, how do I get my Bitcoin liquid? And he follows the prompts, and he copies the address, and he pastes it, and he hits go, and his Bitcoin vanishes. And he looks at the video, and the video says, just make double sure that you copied the entire address. And it shows that you copied everything but the last character.
Whoa.
And I'm sure it's made up, but that has happened, right? Somebody sent big amount of Bitcoin to the wrong address by accident. That ain't coming back. And so, as Satoshi would say, consider it a contribution to the rest of the community. But so that's the type of stuff that the institutionalization of these baskets or holders or vehicles that people can transact, because Imagine being a fiduciary. And you did that. You copied all but the last
Oh my
paragraph,
God.
and you sent your clients money. You thought it was going to Coinbase and it went to the ether. That would be bad, right? So the idea that you can transact in this wrapper and someone else
The
does
ETF,
all
meaning the ETF.
yeah, the ETF,
Yeah.
and someone
Yeah.
else does all the technology. And I know the hardcore Bitcoin maxis are like, no, no, not your keys. No. I'm like, fine. Look, I got it that in a perfect world, total self-sovereignty and total control off the grid in your cold storage, definitely perfect and ideal. And in the future, but the problem is in a world of bearer assets, you've now reintroduced a whole bunch of risks. Like, you and I have talked about this. I don't like the fact that it's kind of like the bad old days where you got to sit on your porch with your gun and hope that someone with a bigger gun doesn't come and say, hey, give me your Bitcoin. You're like, well, no, that could never happen. Well, of course it could happen. It's a bearer asset. If you have the seed phrase, someone can take it from you. And that's one problem. And so banks were created because people used to have all their wealth in their house and the bad guys would come steal it. And I'm like, well, let's put it in a bank. And then the bad guys would just go rob the bank. And I'm like, well, let's get bigger banks and then let's find a way to make it electronic and store it in New York. And then you can have access to it. And that helped, right? I would say, how much money has been stolen from the Fed? $0. How much money has been stolen from Bank of America's home office in New York? $0. Bank of America, El Paso, Texas. More than $0. How about People's Wall Safe? More than $0. I don't have a wall safe behind the sign, by the way.
So on
Or
the
how
other
about
wall.
yeah, other wall. It's that other wall. How
Yeah.
about your purse? Lots. People lose money out of your purse or wallet all the time because it's far from the origin of the money. So how much money has been stolen from the Bitcoin blockchain? $0. $0. Not one hack, not one, $0. How about from Coinbase? $0. How about from smaller Mount Gox-esque exchange? More than $0. How about when people are trying to transact? More than $0. How about people's wallet? More than $0. So the further you are from the source, the more at risk it is. So we do need to figure out ways to manage OPSEC, right? I mean, Jameson Lopp is awesome about this. Now, no one's going to mess with Jameson, right? They tried once, they swatted him, and it was a very scary thing. But now he's on a compound somewhere with his AR-15s and all his other guns, and no one's going to mess with this guy. But there was a time where people were trying to mess with him because they knew as a core developer, he had a bunch of Bitcoin. And this is one of my favorite stories. I don't know if I told you this before. So I had lunch with him the last day he was in North Carolina. So he was from University of North Carolina. And he said, it might be my last day here. I'm like, what do you mean it might be? He says, well, I built a compound off the grid and I hired a private investigator to find it. And today's the day that he tells me if he found it or not. If he found it, I'm not moving. If he didn't find it, I'm moving.
Wow.
The guy didn't find it, so he moved. So no one knows where he is, and that's good for him. But that type of OPSEC
Yeah,
thing,
I don't want to live that way.
I don't either.
See, that's the problem. So, like, look, I just want to stay the normal people, okay? The normal people are going to drive this market. It is not the lops. I'm sorry, okay? I don't want to live with an AR-15 in my hand every day worrying about my
Nope, I
kid.
don't. Nope, I have no interest in that.
I don't want somebody to stick a gun in my face and go, oh, dude, you're self-custodying. I've never had a bank steal money from me, ever. I've had banks try to, like, feed me to death. And then every year I call them and go, hey, wipe all these fees or I'm moving. Wipe every one of them.
But look, what happened this week, right? Cuba had a problem, right? They had a run on the bank. The ATMs ran out of money. And look, when you put your money in the bank, it's the bank's money. We all understand that. And to your point, touch wood, I've never had a bank take my money. Now I didn't put money in La Jolla National. People did lose money in that bank. And there've been other banks that have gone under. So, but keeping all the money in my house, I'm just not doing it. I'm just never going to do it.
Right.
Keeping all my Bitcoin on my phone? Are you joking? People have SIM swapped me twice.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you
They
so
got
much. I'm telling people, I'm like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. First off, that we would talk about it in public is insanity.
Yes.
Like that you guys would even like hammer me over. Oh, I think Gary's on Coinbase. First off, you have no clue where I am. I will never tell you. We should never be discussing this. This is your own decision. If you want to carry, I have silver here, man. Come fucking take it from me, okay? Like it's going to be really hard to take the silver, but you could take my little. I mean, you're going to be here for hours on cameras.
Yeah.
Have to get through the guard dogs and all that stuff. It's just not real to me. It's to me, it's like we have such good news here. And to be so puritanical about it, we do not need total self-custody and every human being on the planet buying potato chips with Bitcoin for it to be massively, massively successful. We don't. I don't even know why we go down. To me, it's series 18, episode 6 when we get there.
Yeah.
It's not it's not 2024.
What we need is more adoption.
Well,
right?
that's what I was
More
where I was
people-
trying to get to.
Yeah.
The money that came in this quarter, meaning 90 days ago, what's getting ready to happen, Mark? Because I don't think this is the big money.
Oh, no, it's not. Look, it was a meaningful amount, but no, it's not, because right now I think we've had, I think the last I looked, it was 50 billion. Maybe it was 60. I think it was 60 billion. 60 billion of inflows into the ETFs, and maybe 10 billion of outflows from GBTC. So it was like net 50. So AUM had gone to 50 billion. Well, 50 billion is 1/6 of the number that I thought would happen in the first year. Okay, so we're a little behind schedule. I thought we'd be at 150, about 120 billion by now. So we're a little bit behind schedule. And I do think that it's already happened, right? Because those 13Fs are 45 days old. So in the last 45 days, a whole bunch more has come in. And every day that we keep making higher lows and higher highs, there's going to be more accumulation. And, we just had the first red dot on plan B, right? So the red dots are the parabolic move time. And so the next 12 months, look, I think the next 12 months are going to be truly spectacular, like truly spectacular.
And driven by this demand.
Just all demand. Yeah, all demand. The supply shock happened. And so fair value was in the low 50s. I round down to 50. And what a halving does is it doubles the fair value. Well, why? Because
it had the supply.
The miners would go out of business if the price didn't increase. So now it's a little different this time because of ordinals and runes and the high transaction fees. So let's say it's not double this time. Let's say it's 80. Okay, so that's a fair value norm. Now here's an interesting thing. If you look at Tim Peterson's Metcalfe's law model, it says fair value is about 80. If you look at Charles Edwards' model that's based on conversion of electricity to value, so it's a power consumption based on hash rate, says 80. That's interesting. I have this rule. If I hear it once, I remember it. If I hear it twice, I write it down. If I hear it 3 times, I do something about it. So let's say that we got 3 independent, theories that all come up with the same fair value, 80K. So we're still below fair value today at 66. So we're going to accrete to fair value. Well, then what's going to happen? Well, then the FOMO is going to start to kick in, because people are going to see, and look, I said it on a couple of times, this Thanksgiving, it's going to be the best Thanksgiving in the history of Thanksgivings. I mean, maybe the first one was pretty good too, but this one's going to be amazing because the last few have sucked. because, you know, you're that guy that's crypto and you're kind of welcome, but you're not really welcome. And depending on when people took your advice or didn't take your advice, this one, everyone's going to love all of us because price is going to be probably touching, you know, 6 digits. Everyone's going to be talking about it. It's going to be everywhere. Every institution's going to own it. Every financial advisor is going to have given in. Even Vanguard's going to have given in. And look, this, and then you get the final parabolic move through April of next year, where, you know, do we hit 150? Do we hit one? I don't really care. But what I really care about is everyone, and I literally mean everyone, not just American, but everyone globally, getting a wallet, understanding how to own some, opening an account with one of the exchanges around. You know, we've invested in a bunch of them in different places, Latin America, Eastern Europe, Asia, you know, the Coinbase equivalent. Understanding that this is the greatest savings technology
There you
in
go.
mankind, right? And people say, when should you sell your Bitcoin? I'm like, well, when do you sell your savings? Big payment for a house, big payment for college, big payment for starting a business, lending money to somebody. I don't know. When do you spend your savings?
Maybe you have a big loss in another thing, and you go, "Hey, look, maybe I take a loss."
Exactly.
Like,
But the other thing about savings is you drop money into it every week, every month,
yeah,
whatever, and it accumulates over time. And then you take some out to replenish your spending. And for now, we're going to spend in fiat. Someday, maybe we spend in something else, stable coins or Bitcoin. I don't really care.
yeah.
But this idea of a spending bucket to fund your lifestyle, a savings bucket that is your core asset, and then the get rich bucket. I would say, you know, that's for the friend's brother-in-law's condo deal, the hot stock tip from Roaring Kitty. I was joking, you're going to lose all that, so keep it small. But that's okay. You know, trying to get rich is fine. But the stay rich savings technology, could that be an increasing amount of Bitcoin? Sure. Should you have some venture capital in there? Yes. Should you have some energy in there? Yes. Should you have some?
Mark, let me ask you though, how does we go from 60 grand? Most of this ETF buying to date has probably been in the 50s, 60s, whatever. We get to 80 fair value, which that could be a whole conversation on, hey, how do you really establish fair value? But let's say we get to 150. Do all of these savings, because I think that's the right way to look at Bitcoin. It is a forced saving program. And the thing I like about the wallet the most is that, especially multi-sig, it would slow down any exit.
Yeah.
I love that. Hey, I got to call.
No, I do love that. I do love it.
I think that's good instead of just having a thing I can just panic, hit a button. But
Yeah.
let's say we go to 150. Is Millennia or Horizon going to rebalance? Because now they're at 28%. I mean, what's the group? Magellan, one group just put 28% of the 200 million they manage. They put $40 million into Bitcoin, which is like, I think that's the right strategy. Fucking big number, somewhere between 20 and 80 allocation at this stage of this game. Do these firms rebalance?
Sure. But that won't create.
To what? To what? To
no. To whatever. To real estate, to venture capital, to gold, to, I mean, yes, they're going to rebalance. I mean, that's what institutions do.
It's going to be a lot of rebalance, though, man. It's a large number to rebalance. That's
of course. But here's the thing: how fast we go parabolic will be determined, I believe, by leverage. How much leverage comes in the market? How many people use futures? Because you can have massive leverage with futures, right? You can put 3% down and lever up 33 times. In some cases, it's 99 to 1, which is crazy. But I think there's less.
A guy like me shouldn't be doing. A guy like me shouldn't be using any of that stuff, right?
No. But look, and now there are still going to be people that do that.
Yeah.
The difference is.
But I just want the audience to hear. I want the audience to hear from you. A guy like me should not be playing in that game, even though I got a lot of money and I could probably like hire.
No, you want to take a margin. You want to put your Bitcoin at Arch Lending, portfolio company, shameless plug, right? And borrow
Arch
50 cents
lending,
on Arch,
you own
Arch
part
Lending.
of that?
We own a piece of that. Yep.
Okay.
And you want to put your Bitcoin at Arch Lending and borrow 50 cents on the dollar against it all day long.
Right up. That's
10
the way to
times
do
out
it.
of 10, right? That's like a margin loan at your UBS account, right? Totally good, right? If like when they were having, zero interest margin loans, if you didn't take one out and buy stocks yielding 3%, how would you not do that, right? And now you got to pay 6 or 8%, but do I think Bitcoin's going to appreciate more than that? Yep. So, or are the things I want to do with the money in the short run? Yeah. Right. I went to a hockey game last night and I paid a stupid amount for a ticket because I wanted to see the hockey game. But that's fun, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's stuff you
Well, it's
do.
a lot cheaper than you buying the whole stadium for the whole year, right? And then
Amen. Amen. And
fuck that, dude. I don't want to buy a seat. I'll pay 10 grand for a seat one time. I
yeah,
don't want the $50,000 thing. I got to go to it every
exactly.
week.
I don't want to go every week. I want to go
Entertain
once or
people.
twice a year. Yeah. So, but the thing about it is the price is going to move, but I don't think it's going to move as far because the amount of people who do the crazy leverage relative to the total amount
Coming in. Yeah, right.
And so the impact, and so maybe we don't go all the way to 150, 160. Maybe we only get to 1.5 times fair value, 1.7 times fair value. Normally we get to 2 to 2.3. And then the question to your real question is, do people sell? Well, yes, the people who are just speculators and gamblers and leverage traders, they're going to sell. Will the state of Wisconsin that just bought 100 million, will they sell? No, because they have 0.1%. They're going to let that go to 0.2, then 0.3, then 0.4, maybe even 0.5.
That's my point. Those guys are not going to rebalance.
No, they're not.
No, that is my point. Okay.
The people that put in 20%,
yes, okay,
are going to rebalance. The people that put in 10 basis points, they're not going to rebalance. And so I do think there has been a fundamental demand shock. So aggregate supply, aggregate demand, okay? Demand shock, okay? Demand moves up, price goes up. All other things equal, which they are, and with Bitcoin, supply is not only fixed, it actually has leakage. Some coins are lost or stolen, right? It's real. And so it is, from that perspective, a beautifully deflationary asset as opposed to an inflationary asset. And, I keep coming back to this whole thing of, and I'm stealing it from Jimmy Song. He gave this great talk once, and people don't like the term, slave, but it's important, right? If you work for a salary, you are a slave to fiat. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that it can be taken away from you through inflation, through no fault of your own, right? You're saving it. You worked hard for it. You are forced.
It's like air leaking out of your bicycle tire really, really slowly.
Really, really slowly.
It becomes more and more difficult to make more progress down that same exact road.
Perfect analogy. Perfect analogy. And the difference is, if you convert that to Bitcoin, you plug the hole. And in fact, some air gets pumped in, not because you're actually doing anything, but because that air that's leaking out of the fiat comes back in the sense that one Bitcoin is always one Bitcoin.
Right.
We don't price Bitcoin in Bitcoin. We price it in dollars. And if the dollar's going lower, then your Bitcoin, in theory, is going up. And the best one is that meme that's going around now. A house in whatever it was, 2000, $200,000, And then in 2015, $300,000, and in 2030, $500,000. And that was 600 and something Bitcoin. And then it was 60 Bitcoin. And now it's 6 Bitcoin. It's like, wow. Okay. I mean, that's interesting. And so when you have that deflationary asset, you decouple from being a fiat slave, and you actually aren't forced to act quickly. You can think about what you want to do, where you want to add value, where you want to create. And I do believe, right, it unleashes the greatest, most powerful thing in the history of mankind, which is human creativity. And AI is doing this too. AI doing things that we used to spend time on, but so did grocery stores, right? We used to have to go find our food. Think about how much of your day at some point in history you had to spend foraging for food.
Yep.
We don't do that. What did we do at that time? We did other stuff, more productive stuff. Maybe some of it was less productive, but mostly productive stuff. And, automobiles, we have more time. We don't have to imagine being in a covered wagon going across the country. People did that.
I'm just started watching the series that the Benjamin Franklin story. Who's the actor?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And who's the actor? Really great actor. But it hit me how profound and why. I was like, okay, he landed in France, took a buggy and cart, probably took him 3 days to get to Paris to go talk to the kingmaker. No text, no company. No wonder they were writing the Bill of Rights and the Constitution.
Amen.
I started thinking, what the fuck? I need to get rid of some of this noise.
Amen.
Like we are being interrupted constantly, and Bitcoin has actually made me think of.
Oh man, you couldn't have made that up. You couldn't have made that up. Interrupted
constantly. Totally.
Here's the crazy thing.
Spectrum colony.
I tell this story, not all the time, but on occasion. So we have the 2 older kids, 35 and 33, and then we have our caboose, who's now 13. But when he was born, so my wife, I would come home at the end of the day. She'd literally hand him to me because we were 47, right? It's not the same as when you're 27. We're 47.
Believe me, I know, man.
Yeah, that's right. And she would hand me the child, and she would go to do whatever she needed to do. And that was fair. And we would sit on the floor for like 2 hours, because what does a little baby do? They don't really do very much. I had more big ideas in those 6 months of doing that.
That's right.
Than I'd had in the previous 6 years, because I was doing nothing except thinking.
Yep.
And because you can't be on your phone because the baby's moving and
well, there are some parents that believe they can be on their phone, and I'm here to tell you the kid knows it, that you're not paying attention.
Of course they do. No,
you're not paying attention.
Oh, my 13-year-old busts me all the time. Dad. So, but look, I think
it's so amazing you're talking about this, because like as I get older, I'm literally going, hey, I need more time to think and be. I do too much. Now, if I talk to my brother, he'd be like, I am the king of doing. I'm like, yeah, yes, dude, but like, I'm enjoying thinking. I'm actually asking really profound questions to myself that I don't have the answers to.
Oh no, thinking is the best. There are a couple things. So one, there's a piece by William Deresiewicz called Solitude.
You read a lot still, right?
Which,
Mark?
Yeah, I mean, not as much as I should.
No.
But yeah, we froze a little bit.
Yeah, what's the
I don't read as much as I should. Like all these books behind me. Well, it's a paper. It's called Solitude and Leadership. And it was actually William Deresiewicz's address to the pleb class at the Army Academy, West Point, a number of years ago. And he basically talked about leadership and this concept of solitude. And you know, the ability to be alone with your thoughts. And one of the things he says, if I love, right? If you ask anyone, what do you think about X? What do you think about Palestine? What do you think about, politics? What do you think? The first thing out of their mouth is not what they think. It's what they heard someone else say and they're parroting back. Because we're so busy that we don't actually take the time to take all those inputs and then sit and think, what do I really believe? What do I really think about this thing? And so it's those long walks. And I use a simple analogy. So I use that paper to teach a leadership thing to some students up at Notre Dame. And we send them in the summer before they come to college through a program they go outward bound, right? 2 weeks in the wilderness, no phones, no nothing, tough, like literally no toilet paper. I mean, it's like real. And for 2 days of that 2 weeks, you are by yourself, literally by yourself in the wilderness, no other people, like it's called your solo. And you're supposed to journal and think
Hey, what's the age on that, by the way?
So they're 17, 18, about to go to college.
I'm sending my kid. Okay, I got to get.
I sent my son.
Boom.
And it's so good.
Okay, you got to hook me up with that. Okay, that's a must.
Oh yeah. No, it's amazing. And so I talked to them after they've done this, and I said, why do you think we sent you out in the wilderness? Right? And I draw a circle. And I say, all right, here's a circle. And here's, coloring in. Here's all the time you spend on Facebook and Instagram. Okay. And here's time for your homework. And here's your time sleeping. And here's your time eating. And here's time arguing with your brother and sister. And here's stuff, consuming media. Okay. What do you see? It's a full circle. I said, all right. So what do you care about? What's your passion? Okay. What's another thing for passion? Spark, right? Fire. So if I put a spark, an ember, in that full circle, what happens? Goes out because there's no what? No oxygen. So what if I erase all that stuff? No phone, no computer, no mom and dad, no nothing. So open circle. Now I put the spark in there. What happens? Glows, right? And so every once in a while, we need to go outside or do and just take a walk, meditate, whatever it is, and think. And one of my favorite things is IBM used to give every person who joined a little plaque.
That used to be a really important company, right?
Used to be.
International Business Machines?
Yeah, used to be. And it was when they had a CEO who every person that joined got a little plaque that said, think. And you were rewarded. Like if he came by and saw you with your feet up on the desk, just thinking, that was good, right? And so when I got married, my wife was in a cross stitch. I had her cross stitch me the word think, and it's in my desk drawer. And I don't look at it every day, but it's there as a reminder that every once in a while, you just got to stop. And, someone was talking about, maybe it was even Buffett at the last meeting. He was talking about the power of open time in your schedule, right? Literally scheduling open.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're a lay-a-bed. It means you're actually probably more productive because you're, using the power of the subconscious.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful. I don't know how we migrated to this conversation, but Bitcoin takes me into very interesting conversations.
Well, no, this is why I say AI got a long way to go. Because you and I did not mean to be talking about, solitude and thinking, but that's what dialogue and debate in search of truth, which is what I think these long form conversations.
Yes.
And the thing that makes, it's funny, I was with Scott Melker, and I love Scott, and on his show, and he said, what makes a great podcast or great show is where you invite great guests and you ask a question and then you shut up and let the person talk. Right? Nope. That makes a really good podcast. You can
Yeah.
get good. But what makes a great one is where the person who's hosting has done work before and has a bunch of questions they want to answer, real questions, because questions are way more important than answers, like off the chart more important than the answers. The questions are the most important thing. But secondly, where after they ask a question, they listen to the answer and ask a second probing question that takes you in a new direction. And that's what you do really, really well. So that's why we end up in these places, because if most people listen to respond,
Yeah.
what you should listen is to learn. 2 ears, 1 mouth, right? The whole thing. So we should not be thinking what we're going to say next. We should be listening to what someone's saying and say, I didn't know that. Or I did know that, and I want to add. So it's about learning and exchanging, and then, like you say, meandering in a way that's unexpected. And that's always where the fun starts.
Yeah. Well, just thank you so much. I really appreciate you're so awesome to have a conversation with, because one, you're equipped to, you're not fixed and like controlling. So you're kind of, that tells me your closet's pretty clean too. If you don't have to be all scripted.
Love
Yeah.
it.
Oh yeah.
Love it. Look, flexibility is important. I like conversation. I mean, I really, really, really like conversation. And I like conversation with people of different perspectives and different interests. One of my things on Twitter is I like to engage with people that I know I disagree with on something, because that's how you learn, right?
Yeah.
And there is one thing I had an exchange with someone earlier today. They said, I've, a bunch of people and they're just crossing the line and personal attacks. I'm like, look, absolutely. There are things, no tolerance, block early and often, but disagreeing is not block worthy.
That's right.
Right? You attack me, you say I'm stupid, like Nuriel calls me an imbecile. I'm like, I have no time for that. And like, fine. But I may be an imbecile, but I don't need to hear it from you. So disagreeing and debate and dialogue, that's all great. And I want that. But it needs to be civil, and it needs to be, the give and take. But the thing I do love about this format is it's not soundbite, right? Short form is all about sound bites, right? And that's why I used to not get invited back on CNBC very often in the olden days, because all they wanted was a soundbite.
That's right.
And I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, well, then you can't come back. And for a while, they were pretty good about, actually, it was Bloomberg was the best. So they had Stephanie and Eric, who were amazing. And I would go on for an hour, and we would talk about all these different things based on what was happening in the news or what people would type in questions. And it was amazing. And then the producer said, that's too complicated. I'm like, no, that's what it should be, right? The talking head sound bites are not useful.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, media is being disrupted right this second. And that's why I'm doing
right in front of our eyes. Yeah.
Like I have griped about media and education since I was 14. And while I was thinking the other day, I'm like, hey, I still have tons of energy. I can't keep bitching about education and not do something about it. These platforms, for me, this is education right now. I'm easing into this. Okay, I can't keep bitching about this. Okay, I was a horrible student because I had horrible teachers. They weren't like you. You'd be a great teacher to go to.
Oh, you're a good man. You're a good man.
No, I would be, because you'd be interesting, man. You're drawing pictures, you're using analogies, you're not just getting so stuck in. Can be really easy to educate people on and break the fiction that they have been told, either the fiction or just the ignorance that was rolled out to them, and they just don't know. I mean, the amount of
no, they don't, and it's tragic because
it's tragic, man.
Well, no, it's tragic because it's intentional. and again, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but if you go back and you do just even a little bit of research on the handful of guys who created the modern American education system, it's a bunch of Germans and a bunch of US financiers, and they had one goal, which was to make factory workers.
Absolutely.
Right. And therefore, you don't want people who ask questions. You don't want people who challenge authority. You don't want people who are creative. You don't want people, you want, right, people who sit on their square and do what they're told. In a knowledge economy, right, we're 150 years beyond that. In a knowledge economy, we desperately need to blow up the current system and start over. And AI is going to help us with this, but it's all about asking questions. It's all about hands-on. So, and I'll give you one little funny thing. So, we have the caboose. He comes along, and you can relate to this, right? Having younger kids, and as an older guy, where you have some experience and some knowledge when you're not a afraid little 20-something, and whatever the teacher says is right. And so we say, our older kids went to public schools, fine. So we'll pay the money and we'll go to private school. So this private school down the way, I won't name names, but if people know where I live, they probably know who I'm talking about. And they have a half-day evaluation for 4-year-olds. Like, that seems ridiculous, but okay, fine. So we drop him off and go back after lunch, and the administrator says, well, I just need to report, we noticed some behaviors with Will. I'm like, oh, bring it. What? He says, well, he was having a really hard time sitting on his square. I said, I'm out. I said, I don't want a 4-year-old boy ever, or girl, but never, ever, ever put a 4-year-old boy on a square. I mean, that's not what 4-year-old boys do. I mean, forget it. So, because, okay, and what else? They said, well, he was walking around the room, picking things up and looking at them. Oh my God, you mean he's curious?
Yes, he is.
So
shame on you, man. Shame on you and your wife.
Oh, no, Gary. It was, my wife was so embarrassed. I was so pissy with this woman. I was like, I don't know if I used the word abomination, but I said, this is an abomination. This is horrible that you think this is good. I said, we are so out. And they doubled down. They sent us a letter saying, we'd really love Will to join our community.
I'm sure they would. They'd love to turn him into a robot.
Yeah.
I was with Kathy Woods.
Yeah.
I was with Kathy Woods at a baseball game a week ago, and she's done some stuff with the education system. And first time I met her, and and it's kind of on the edges of inside the system. And I'm like, hey, Kathy, I've been doing this my whole life. I know you're much smarter than me, but the education system cannot possibly get fixed from within. You can't have one person. You cannot have one person, one human being involved from the inside. You have to do this from outside. A week later, I'm with a congresswoman, and I said, hey, that $80 billion that the Fed uses for education, if you get in office, I will dedicate the rest of my life and all the Bitcoin I have. If you give me 3 to 5% of that $80 billion to compete with states and feds, $400 million, and just do a test against my Bitcoin. I'll even put a fucking loan up against it. Okay.
That's awesome.
You need to give me some, will you? She's like, why wouldn't we do that? How is this a bad idea? Yeah.
I know.
None of these firms have any competition. Let me create something as a model. Okay. And just give me 4 years. Maybe some idiot from Louisiana could actually fix this with $500 million. But it has to do from the outside, just like Bitcoin's doing it from the outside.
It's the perfect way to end. It's exactly how Bitcoin's doing it from the outside, with an anonymous founder, and none of the pressure of we've always done it that way before.
Yeah.
And that is the beauty of innovation. It's the beauty of of first principles, right? First principle thinking. So look, enjoyed the conversation as always. Look forward to doing it again live soon. And
I may
we'll talk.
see you in Austin at Consensus. I think you're
Yeah,
going,
a couple
right?
weeks.
Are you
Yep.
going?
I'm on the edge. I really want to go, but there's some things I got to move around, but I'm working on.
You need me to come pick you up? That make it easier?
Yeah, well, that would make it easy. So that'd be good. All right, we'll talk.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. Okay.
Thanks, Gary. Talk to you
Ciao.
soon.